What are specific traits that you've noticed out of female leaders that perhaps make them fantastic candidates to be up level when it comes to communication?
My experience is that women are very good at being collaborative.
How is media training and communication skill training relevant in the context of building a strong personal brand?
I think something that has become much more important in general, in communicating, in general, in the big wide world, is the advent of social media.
What are the biggest faux pas that you see, Martine, in the communication world?
Any interview, public interview or public presentation is an exchange of commercial value.
You have to be able to see the funny side of things and the funny side of your own personality. And I like...
We have a lawyer listening to us right now. I'm sure it will come as a huge surprise to you if I said that lawyers can be a bit stubborn sometimes.
Really?
If you have a panel presentation coming up, or you are seen speaking at an event, a conference, you have a keynote coming up, or you have an interview with the press, you will find this episode particularly relevant. I have gathered together two of the UK leading authorities when it comes to media training and communication training. First, let me introduce you to Martine. Martine Croxall, you might have seen on the BBC, I'm sure, is a senior presenter with BBC News. She's worked for over 30 years as a reporter and anchor, so I'll be surprised if you haven't seen her on telly. Alongside her work in the studio, Martine is an experienced presentation skills trainer, both internally at the BBC Academy and for corporate clients with upstage training. And she's joined by Neil Midgley, who is here today to talk to us about media training. Neil is the co-founder of Upstage Training and a media trainer with 14 years of experience. Neil has coached hundreds of senior leaders for public interviews before, from press and TV to conference and podcasts. Neil draws on 20 years of experience as a journalist, mainly with the Daily Telegraph, where he was media editor. Neil and I also share something in common. We were both former litigators, and amongst other law firms, Neil has previously practiced as a litigator at Magic Circle Linklaters. Martine, Neil, we are going to talk about communication, media training. I have to say it is one of the first time out of over 120 episodes that I don't have to train my guests on how to handle a microphone.
So you think?
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, so how does it feel to be on the other side of the mic? Because you both are seasoned journalists, anchors. Tell us about being on the other side.
It's very uncomfortable, isn't it? This is not where we're happiest at all. But it's a very good experience because Neil does obviously the media training for our company, and I tend to concentrate on presentation skills. And it's really good to be put in the position that you're asking your delegates to be put in. So
right.
it's like a teacher needing to constantly learn something new to understand what it's like to be a pupil.
It's like CPD for a media trainer. Because I would much rather be in your position. I would much rather be asking the questions.
We
can ask you a few questions.
Yeah, I would love to. Being grilled by both of you.
Oh, well, don't
That's
careful
exciting.
what you wish.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll take it. Why don't we just start off by giving a bit of an overview of why we're having this conversation. Why is it particularly relevant in this day and age to master communication skills, to master media training?
I think it's what sets humans apart from the robots. And increasingly people are worried about how AI is going to take over their job. But what people can do that at the moment AI can't do. AI isn't in the room with you. It's not able to communicate in a persuasive way. It won't be able to draw on its own individual experience of the real world, which makes you more relatable to the people you're communicating with.
They keep talking about artificial general intelligence, don't they, when the robot is going to be able to replicate the full capacities of the human brain. But I haven't heard anybody talk about artificial general presence, which is what you need when you're communicating. The robot is not going to be able to smile anytime soon, or it's not going to be able to lean in when it's making an important point. And so in the age of AI, if you think about a corporate lawyer, for example, so many of those tasks that they do on a daily basis are going to be automated. The bit where they're going to be able to add value for their firms and also to promote their own careers is in how they interact with other human beings, how they negotiate in the room, how they do BD with potential clients. Those are going to be the distinguishing markers, not just the black letter law and the drafting skills.
And how often do you come across very seasoned professionals, leaders in top organizations, top law firms, who actually have never been media trained or never had formal communication training?
Quite a lot, because that's why they get us in. Often people rise through the ranks. This is true in law firms. It's true in other organisations. Less so in the commercial world, but in the public sector, in the third sector. People rise because they are technocratically very good. The prime example of this is our Prime Minister, who has risen as a supposed technocrat, and yet still, I'm sure he's been media trained 100 times, but I would still relish the opportunity to get my hands on him.
I have no view on that at all.
You'll pass. Martin, I can't help but notice the fact that you said people. And when I hear you say people, I'm having sort of summer flashbacks. I feel that it would be leaving the elephant in the room if I didn't address your statement about not really using the word pregnant people and using the word pregnant women instead. Can you tell us a bit more about how that relates to your stance or your belief around public speaking?
Journalists, particularly broadcasters, have to be clear. And we also have to be accurate. And I was reading into a clip of an interview that I had done an hour before. And it's very important to reflect accurately what your interviewee has said. Otherwise, you're putting words in their mouth. You're editorialising. And so my correction of a script on the hoof, because it was a script that had been written at speed in a very busy newsroom where things are moving very fast, was just a reflection of the language that my interviewee had used the hour before.
Accuracy is key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's accuracy, it's trust, it's are we representing what the person said to us rather than our interpretation of it?
And Neil, you were about to?
No, I was just going to say, obviously there was a certain amount of publicity around this.
That's an understatement,
There were,
to put it mildly.
there were complaints, and I think it shows just how much people care about the BBC in this country, quite rightly, as our national broadcaster, that that people like Martine, although it is stressful in the moment, people like Martine and the people that she works with and the women that she works with are held to a higher standard, and that's as it should be.
And we expect to be. It's a privilege to do the job I do, and it matters. I know some people are critical of the BBC. Sometimes we're critical of ourselves. We don't get it right all the time. Nobody does, but we try. We really try to get it right. We really try to be impartial and transparent about what's going on. And it's a peculiar organisation in that respect, because we report on ourselves.
Of course.
in the way that you can't really think of many other organisations
No.
that would ever do that.
When I was at the Daily Telegraph, we didn't spend much time writing about the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time writing about the BBC. Well, I did in particular, because I was the media editor.
And it's our news bosses make the point very frequently that the news department is separate from other functions of the BBC, which is why the news department can investigate and interrogate and examine what other parts of the BBC are doing. And we also have to do that to ourselves sometimes if we do get things wrong. There's a lot of effort goes into what we do, and I think sometimes we probably need to explain it a little more to people, how we work and why we work in the way that we do. You know, we work from a book called Editorial Guidelines, and it's been put together over the course of over 100 years since the BBC first began, and it gets updated every now and again to reflect, you know, the real world that we're operating in. So there's a lot of guidance that we have to follow.
One thing that I'm really interested and curious to ask you about, and is in the context of your upcoming event for Speaking with Confidence, particularly geared at a female audience. I was wondering, what are specific traits that you've noticed out of female leaders that perhaps make them fantastic candidates to be up-leveled when it comes to communication, and what it is that you've learned from your career as a presenter, as an anchor, that you can pass on to those female leaders?
I'm going to have to generalise
Sure,
to answer that question, because there'll be people watching who say, well, I know a man who can do that, or I know a woman who doesn't do that. My experience is that women are very good at being collaborative, and they're very good at lifting each other up. And there's a group within the BBC called BBC Women, which came together over equality matters. And it's the strength in numbers, and to champion each other, and to listen. And I think those skills are immensely transferable. And sometimes women think that they're not qualified to do what they're being asked to do for their employer. But they will have so many transferable skills from other parts of their life that they haven't necessarily gathered that experience in the workplace, but they need to realise that it's useful in the course of their employment. And I think there are so many opportunities to present your message. During the pandemic, a friend of mine wrote a book about public speaking for millennial women. And she came to see me because I'm a presenter. And we actually talked about a very different aspect of presentation, which was really centred around my work as a union rep for the National Union of Journalists, and how when you're in a meeting and you're having to, thrash out quite difficult things, sometimes you're going to have one opportunity around a table to influence or persuade or make a difference. And if you can think about, what's my key message? Why am I here? What's the purpose of me being in this meeting? A little bit like how you'd approach, I would hope, a presentation at a conference or in a seminar, presenting a paper to the board. Why am I here? Who's my audience? And what's the one thing I need to land? And that's useful in so many settings. I mean, somebody I did some training with even suggested it was useful at bedtime with the children.
Yes.
What's my key message?
I wonder what you were going to say then when you go as far as bedtime. Yeah, I mean, I would echo that from I media train people, so I train people how to be interviewed in public, on a podcast, for example, or on a conference platform or on TV. But delegates often say that the techniques that they learn during the session are more widely applicable. So I trained one guy, and I'd been retained by the head of comms in this organisation. And after the session, he bumped into the head of comms at the coffee machine. And she said to him, how was the media training? And he said, oh, yeah, it was very good. And then he sort of leaned into her and said, I think it'll be jolly handy for job interviews. So, and that, if that's the kind of feedback we're getting, then I think we're probably doing something right. Because if you're instilling in people techniques that they can learn, that they can use more generally in communication, as well as when they're on their feet or under the studio lights. That's obviously, that adds more value.
Absolutely. I think as well, if you can practice it enough, it'll become second nature. You'll almost do that sort of checklist of, why am I here? Who am I talking to? What do I need to get from this? What do I need to impart? And if that can become second nature, you almost sort of muscle memory. You don't really have to sort of think about it too much any longer.
One theme that I hear more and more amongst my clients and seasoned leaders in any industries, and I would say that is not gender dependent, is the desire to establish a personal brand. That's a little bit of a trendy term. And now within an organization, whether the person is strategically looking for an exit strategy or whether the person actually looks for that long career at the organization, most individuals and leaders want to have that personal brand, right? That thing that people know about them, that LinkedIn profile optimized, that Google ability and SEO searchability. How is media training and communication skill training relevant in the context of building a strong personal brand?
Well, I think something that has become much more important in general, in communicating, in general, in the big wide world, over the last, say, 15 years, is the advent of social media. And the fact that people see famous people, prominent people, on social media, unmediated, and they see them as what they perceive to be the authentic self of this person who is sharing content on social media. And the most prominent recent example of this is Zoran Mamdani winning the New York mayor's race by simply walking up and down Manhattan with his phone and asking people what their problems were that he could solve as mayor, and won the election on the basis of his apparently authentic charisma. And so if you think about what media training would have been like even 10 years ago in the age of Ed Miliband and Theresa May as prime ministers of the UK, very message focused, very straight, very repetitive, that doesn't work anymore. And so if you think about that personal brand, the key to it is that it cannot be fake. It has to be that person as they are. And if that person is a bit shy, if that person is a bit twitchy, if that person stumbles a bit, then that's them. And what we try to do in our training is to allow people to be themselves, but to allow that in the best way possible within guardrails. And, you know, putting a bit of hair and makeup on that authentic self, because all of us, like we three here are sitting today, we are our authentic selves, but within the constraints of a podcast interview. And that is, people who have the strongest personal brands are truest to themselves, but with that extra 20%.
I love that you mentioned that, and I would love to hear your thought, Martine, on this almost paradox between your authentic self and your media trained self, right? Because I've heard leaders push back or almost object to a media training or communication training by waving the card of, oh, but I want to be my authentic self.
They should be.
Right? So is it a paradox, or is it actually, can they coexist?
I don't think it's a paradox at all. I think it's essential that the two align. I describe it as an amplification of who you are in your resting state. You know, if you're having a conversation with, if you're having a conversation, I don't know if I've ever said that phrase before. If Neil and I are having a conversation, it's much lower key, right? It's not we're not making as much effort, but we're still, and then we come and sit here, and we're still, you're being you, I'm being me, but we're kind of putting our best foot forward. We're a slightly bigger version of resting state cells.
A performance version.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there is some sort of jazz hands that needs to go with it, because you need to bring some energy to it, so that we want adrenaline, not cortisol. We want you to feel sort of on your toes, rather than anxious. But there's still the opportunity and the need to be your real self. I don't even like the word authentic, because the word authentic is so overused. It doesn't sound authentic anymore.
I agree.
So I think I say, whoever you are, we want an amplified version of you when you're up on your toes, talking to an audience, influencing, persuading, imparting a message, whatever. The best compliment that people can ever pay to me is when they meet me off air, having watched me on TV. They say, "You're just like you are on the telly." And for me, that means I'm being my real self, because I've been presenting TV programmes for getting on for 30 years now. You cannot put on an act all that time. You will come a cropper, you will be caught out, and you'll get yourself into a lot of trouble. So we want to avoid that. And we try to create an atmosphere where people in our training can have a go at something that they've never tried before, and it doesn't matter if it goes a little bit wrong. It doesn't go wrong. But we want people to relax into it so that they feel that they can be themselves. I mean, years ago, it was almost like we were trying to create identikit presenters, that everybody had to stand in a certain way on stage and sort of pace about. Thank goodness those days are over.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be an ebullient character to be a good presenter.
Received pronunciation.
No, well, I mean, I wouldn't be on TV at all if you had to meet certain standards that were applicable 40, 50 years ago.
I think also sometimes those senior execs that you're talking about, Charlene, who say they want to be their true selves, they sometimes conflate being their true self with fully and expansively, truthfully answering every single question that is put to them in a media interview. And one of the things that those execs sometimes need to be trained in is that yes, they are themselves, but they are also representing their organisation. And that if, let's say they are chief financial officer of a listed PLC, and they do an interview in that company's closed period before its results, and the interviewer says to them, "So, how are the profit figures looking? What's that going to be like when you release your Q3 results next Thursday?" If you are being your, quotes, true self, you might give a full answer to that. But you can't. That's market sensitive information. You simply are not allowed to disclose that. And so there is a path to be trodden between being, of course, always being fully truthful and accurate in your responses, and representing yourself, your personality, your brand, as you were saying, at the same time as putting forward the information that you need to put forward on behalf of the organisation you represent.
For anyone who is not yet familiar with the terminology media training, and perhaps that's a bit of a novelty in itself, could you break it down for us? And who is it relevant for, and within which context?
So Martine trains standing up. I train sitting down. So Martine does presentation skills. So that typically means slide decks. If you're doing a big internal event and you have a presentation to give, or a BD presentation for a law firm, or you're doing a conference keynote or something like that, where you are going to be presenting on your feet, speaking, what is traditionally called public speaking.
Right.
Media training is the art of answering questions. And so that would typically be what we are doing now. So I've trained people to be on podcasts, to do press interviews, whether that's print, press, TV, radio, news, broadly speaking, or increasingly, and I think this is particularly true in professional services, conferences. There are so many events, both internal and external now, that professional services people have to speak at.
Industry panels, etc.
Internal events, client events where they go to speak. And you might get, I mean, I'm sure you've sat, Charlene, in a lot of legal conferences where you have a panel and you have a moderator and you have one panelist who's really interesting, really landing with the audience. You have another panelist who's really dull and people start picking up their phones while that person's talking. Never happened.
I do not know what you're talking
Never
about.
happened.
I'm always on the edge of my seat.
That's right, for every single word.
Wowed by every single presenter.
Do those people, in terms of the raw material that they have to bring to that conference panel, are those two people different or qualitatively different? No, they probably have very similar books to talk, as it were. One of them knows the skill of being interviewed, knows how to be interesting, knows how to tell a story, knows how to connect with an audience, knows how to deliver, knows when to shut up, knows when to butt in, knows when to challenge a question or sharpen a question. And so that is what I do. I train people in the skill of being interviewed.
That's really good to know. And it takes a little bit of knowing your way around it. And the reason I mentioned that is because I've been lucky enough to be featured in, top media, top journals. I have to say, though, sometimes it takes you by surprise when you read what's been written versus when you remember what you said. I know I'm speaking to two journalists here, so...
Well, I have never been a print journalist. I would like to draw the distinction between us and them.
So, Martine said that it was a compliment when people said she's just like she is on the telly. When I was a journalist at the Daily Telegraph, if I would do a sit-down interview with somebody and that would end up being 1,200 words in the Saturday paper, I took it as a compliment if my interviewee said to me that it was a fair reflection of the conversation that we had in the room. And I think that is good practice for any journalist, particularly if you ever want to be invited back to do another interview with that person or that organisation. But for the interviewee, it is important to realise that as long as you are quoted accurately, then that journalist can pick whichever quotes that they want. So if you talk for 45 minutes, you're going to speak thousands of words. In a 1,200 word interview piece, you might get 8 or 9 quotes that are probably between 60 and 80 words each. And just one very simple trick from media training for anybody who's going to sit down. If you came to me and said, I'm sitting down with the FT, they're going to interview me, one of the very simple techniques that I would offer you is to say, okay, so what are the 8 things that you want them to quote you on? And then make sure that when you're in the interview, you get those 8 things out. And that you also know if they're going to do a headline, which is, it says Charlene Giselle : and then it's a little quote, that 10-word quote. What is it that you want that 10-word quote to be? Because if you know that going into the interview, you're not dictating editorially to the journalist. It's not like you're trying to hoodwink them in some way. You are just giving them the material that you want them to reproduce. Now, if they choose, they may choose not to. But if what you give them is strong, then you've got a much better chance of a positive representation than to have that feeling that you had. I'm not saying you did a bad job in your interview, by the way, but that feeling of looking at an interview piece and thinking, I don't recognise this.
In my mind, it makes me realise that there's a lot to be said for doing a live broadcast interview, because nobody can change what you said. I mean, not that you should. That it's completely unacceptable journalistically to try and doctor what someone has said, but you can be absolutely sure that what's being broadcast, if it's live, has come out of your mouth. Yeah, so although a lot of people would shy away from wanting to do live interviews because they think, oh, but it's live and I'm afraid of that. But there's an advantage to it.
There definitely is. That's right. What are the biggest faux pas that you see, Martine, in the communication world? So you hear, and obviously on an unnamed basis, but you hear or you see, and you looking at this presenter or this person presenting, and you're thinking, oh, I wish I could have given them a few tools.
We're not talking about your colleagues, by the way.
No. We're keeping it at a high level.
Beyond reproach. Well, the first thing is jargon.
Okay.
If you need to know who your audience is. If your audience will understand the jargon, well, okay. But often you're talking to a mixed audience and they won't understand it. And if you want your message to travel, it's best to avoid acronyms and industry technical language that other people wouldn't understand. That's the first thing that springs to mind. Because otherwise, as the interviewer, you sort of having to go, sorry, what does that mean? Could you unpick that? You explain that, and then it slows the flow of the interview down. I think the other thing is not an interviewee who doesn't really know why they're there. I mean, it's standard practice with the BBC that we would not share questions in advance with anybody. The most you would do is to say, well, broadly we'll talk about that theme and we'll go on to that theme. But we wouldn't give you the questions in advance. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't try to anticipate them. If you're coming in to do an interview, you would imagine that you would sit and anticipate, well, I'm here to talk about this, so what's the context, what's just happened, looking forwards, where might this subject go? And just to have a clear idea of how you're going to answer those questions. Or otherwise people and they are, and they don't get their main points across. They don't share stories with you which could illustrate what they're saying. That's the best way to get your message across.
Any interview, public interview or public presentation is an exchange of value, an exchange of commercial value.
For the leading ladies listening to this show today, the partners, the C-suite execs, the board members, guest today, Martine Croxall, is hosting an exclusive one-day workshop on March 25th in Covent Garden. And this is super VIP because there are only 6 spots. Here's the thing that nobody talks about. You've already made it. You're already at the top of your career, but you're still having to prove yourself in every high stakes room. Investor pitches, board presentation, keynote speeches, where one flat delivery can almost undo months of credibility and reputation. Martine spent 30 years in covering BBC News, breaking major stories, commanding live broadcasts, training BBC presenters. She knows how to deliver authority without apology, and that's what I love about Martine's style. So if you're tired of being the most qualified woman in the room who still has to work twice as hard to be heard, then go to upstagetraining.com. I've included all the information in the show notes. I hope you can make it and get to meet Martine in person just like I have. Thank you for listening to this conversation today. I hope that you're learning as much as I am recording this with our amazing guest. I would like to ask you for a quick favor. If you are enjoying this show and you are one of our loyal listeners, or perhaps you're new to the show and this is the first time you listen to the episode, thank you and welcome. If I could ask you to make sure that you please follow the show or subscribe to the show using your favorite podcast player, it would be an amazing help to enhance the production and make sure that we can spread the message wide and encourage more high performers just like you to continue to thrive. So on that note, thank you for becoming a subscriber and a follower. And now let's go back to this amazing conversation.
So the interviewee is providing content of some description for the person or organisation who's hosting them. Yeah, if you go on the BBC and talk about burnout, then
Which I did.
There you
And
go.
I had a
So-
wonderful experience.
Good,
There
I'm
you
glad
go.
to hear
And the
it.
journalist was exceptional. So
there you go. Brilliant. Not always so. You are providing valuable content to the BBC. You are filling their airwaves. You are satisfying their audience. In response, in return, they are giving you an opportunity to promote yourself and the services that you offer. If you go into that interview not knowing what the value is that you want to get out of it, then almost by definition, if you do get the value out of it, it's going to be by accident. And
It's a wasted opportunity.
it's a wasted opportunity. And a lot of time, people in organisations who might be put up for interview or for presentation, they do it because their marketing person tells them to, or their comms person tells them to. And that wouldn't, if the comms person or the marketing person is putting them up for something without knowing precisely how that's going to add dollar signs to the business, then both the exec, the partner, the marketing person, the comms person need to take a second look and make sure that they do know what the value is before they start.
It comes down to the why am I doing it? All the best organisations know why they do what they do, apparently. And I would agree with that. We know why we do
You're
what we
channeling
do.
your Simon Sinek now.
I am. I love that TED Talk.
know
It's-
your why.
Know your why.
I love that TED Talk. But the number of people who sort of, if you say, oh, why are you doing this presentation? Oh, I was just told I needed to do something for the conference. Yeah, but why? What are you going to get out of it? And if you don't have that sense of purpose, how do you know what to even say? How do you know where to begin? I wouldn't know where to begin.
Yes.
And I think it's really important before you start sort of throwing stuff onto a slide deck to stop and think, why am I doing this? What do I need to get out of it? What does my organisation need to get out of it? Otherwise, you're sort of aimless.
You need to know who your audience is and what you want them to do. And once you know those two things, the rest tends to flow. You asked about faux pas, Charlene, and I've been holding that little hot ember since you asked that question a couple of minutes ago. My personal bugbear, delighted, thrilled and excited. Fantastic, fabulous, brilliant. I mean, how often, when you look at your own LinkedIn feed, Charlene, how often do you see delighted, thrilled and excited? A lot.
And the P
right?
word, passionate about.
Passionate, I'm honoured, privileged.
I love the rolling of the eyes, Neil, that goes with it. Tell us what's wrong with I am delighted to.
When you read that, do you believe that that person in that moment is feeling delight or thrill?
Absolutely. I think they're having the best day of their lives.
Exactly. It's fake. It's
Manufactured.
It's manufactured. It's cliched, and it doesn't add anything. It only if the LinkedIn post says, I'm delighted to announce that I've got this new job, you could actually start that LinkedIn post with, I've got a new job. That is what people are interested in, if they're interested at all. They're not interested in what emotion you may or may not be pretending to feel.
Well, the inference is that you're happy about it because you're putting it out on social media.
Well, you wouldn't be, I'm delighted to have just been fired. That's not how it goes, is it? People use LinkedIn and other platforms to brag. And in our work, if you're thinking about doing a conference interview or a keynote, when you start adding those layers of fake emotion, that is when you turn your audience off. And it goes back to that point about personal brand. You can be positive, you can absolutely be positive, but when people start to sniff fakery, that's when they pick up their phone and start looking, because they think, why would I believe a word this person's saying?
Martin, do you have most hated words and sentences as well?
Well, yeah, I just think your words and your energy and your tone have to all match as well. Sometimes you hear people say, yeah, I'm really excited about it. And you think, are you?
You
Really?
are?
Because you don't look it and you don't sound it. And that's what I'm going to trust. I'm not going to trust the words. I'm going to trust your demeanour, how you're coming across.
You know,
and that is, sorry to
Please.
interrupt, there's science on that. But human beings pick up emotional meaning much more from facial expression and vocal tone and body language than they do from the words spoken.
Yes. I was smiling when you were saying that because one of the time when it really landed for me, how unimpactful it is to start a keynote or presentation with "I am delighted to be here with you today," is when I was TED trained. And I hired some of the best coaches that I could access to for my TEDx, and I wanted to do a really good job. And by that point, I had already done, years and years of keynote speaking. But I thought there is a significant step up between doing keynote as a profession and being on the TED stage. So I really want to do a good job. And so I hired a TEDx coach specialist. And when we were looking at the script, I had a script that was a first draft, and she said, you go right in, right? You never say a TEDx or a TED going, I am, and I'm here. It starts, you speak, right? You make an entrance, sense of humor, the hook, right?
It's not the most interesting thing you can say, is
it? It really, truly is not.
I host conferences sometimes, and you get sent a script, which is very helpful as a starting point, but I take out those words because I don't want them. I don't want to start by saying it's a great honour to be here today. I've taken the job. You'll be able to tell from my demeanour that I'm happy to be here.
But it takes a lot of confidence to skip that and to go right in.
It's practice though, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's like losing old habits and trying something new and realising that there are more interesting things to begin with than your name and how you feel about being there.
Especially if they're up on a slide behind you.
Or you've been introduced.
On the big screen, or you've been introduced. This all goes kind of links to what you were saying about personal brand, what we've been saying about authenticity. Another product of the modern media age is that people's attention spans have got shorter and shorter and shorter. And so for the TikTok algorithm or the LinkedIn algorithm, if you are promoting a video post on LinkedIn, the judge of success is whether people watch for 2 seconds. You have 2 seconds in which to grab people and to keep them watching your TikTok video. And if they last longer than 2 seconds, then the TikTok algorithm will use that as one of the factors in promoting you to more accounts. And the same is true on a conference stage or in a media interview. And like Martine says, often one of the key things that people get out of media training is that you have to start your answer to a journalist question with the actual point that you're trying to make, rather than waffling around the houses and getting to your point 60 seconds later.
And what about typical, I want to say British forms of politeness, such as, this is a brilliant question, John, or thank you so much for asking me such a good question. and
That's a great question, Charlotte.
Well, we're suckers for a bit of flattery.
Right. No, but because this is particularly British, and the reason I say that is...
I'm not sure.
Really?
No, I think Americans do it too.
Okay, yes, that's fair. We don't do that in France.
Well, no. And therein lies one of the differences between us. No,
Vive la différence.
Absolutely.
I had to learn to say, this is an excellent question, Caroline.
No, you see, why did you have to learn to say that?
Because out of social mimicry.
No. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Okay, so I should
Did
just
you mean it? Was it an excellent question?
I've never said it if I didn't believe the question was good. So that's my boundary.
Yeah, but so I would say if you asked me a question, in fact you did. You have asked me a question, and I've gone, oh, gosh, I don't know. Let me think about that. So that's my real reaction.
It's a genuine.
It's not a thanks, Neil. That was such a good question. Brilliant. I mean, it is nice to be told that your question is good. And
It is nice.
It is nice to be told, but you don't want to be. But you want to feel that they really mean it, and you can suss it. You can smell it if it's not genuine. And if somebody says, "That's a great question," or "That's at the heart of this. That's what this is all about." You know it's a great question without being told it's a great question. And sometimes it feels like people are just saying it's a great question to buy themselves some thinking time, to butter you up. Mm-hmm. And if it's not. If it's not meant, not really heartfelt, you know it, don't you?
People, and I think that is legit, actually. Sometimes people get questions that they find hard to answer, and they know that they're in a public forum on behalf of their organisation, and it's important for them to answer questions appropriately. And for somebody to give themselves just a couple of seconds of processing time by saying, that's a really good question, let me just think about that, or some other sort of time-filling wording, I actually think that's perfectly legit. What you will also find, though, is politicians using that to evade the question. To say, so Keir, didn't you get legal advice on these council elections being cancelled before you made that decision? Well, look, this is a really important question, such a good question.
and then I will not give you an answer.
and I think what your listeners and viewers really want to focus on, Martine, is, and then they go back to their politician's message. So different experienced interviewees use it in different ways. And some are, to my mind, some are legit, some are less legit.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm really curious at this point if you can tell us a little bit more about your alliance. How did...
Shh, we said we wouldn't talk about this.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
It's not in our key messages.
So, how long have I known you? 15 years?
Oh, Neil, you
Longer?
look disenchanted.
So when did you... so it goes back to when I used to present the paper review on the BBC News Channel. And it was in its previous iteration when we were still working from Television Centre. When did you start doing that?
Yeah, probably 2010 or thereabouts.
Yeah, so it's about 15.
So this is the late
ago.
night. There used to be a slot, I think they still have it on Sky News, where they have two guests that come in and preview the following day's front pages with the presenter. And so I was a guest, and Martine was one of the regular presenters.
So on a weekday, it would just be Neil as the contributor, with me as the presenter. But on a weekend, you would often have, on a Saturday night, you'd have another panellist, effectively.
I had a number of TV wives.
Did you?
Yeah, Jenny Russell from The Times.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah, Aisha Hazarika.
You were very good. Oh, yes.
She was very good.
They were very good altogether.
We had You're not a jealous TV wife, Martine, are you?
but look who's he's sitting next to now.
Oh,
Where are they now? Where are you, Jenny? Where are you, Aisha?
Come on, Aisha.
She's in the House of Lords.
Wow, it's all coming out.
These are relevant details that you keep coming out with.
She's been elevated to a peerage. And we worked together in that capacity for years. And we got along. And we met socially.
We did.
Once or twice. And we like each other. Well, I like you.
Yeah.
I like you.
What a good statement.
I do. We don't say that often enough to people, do we?
I do like you. I do.
Oh, no, we are. And we're friends. And we get on well, and we have a very similar sense of humour. And it's...
And professionally, from a training perspective, we complement each other.
Because I don't do media training because there's a conflict of interest there. Because I can't train you today and then interview you tomorrow.
Of course.
Because that's not right. So I'm very clear where my role begins and ends, and then Neil can do both. But I would do the presentation training and Neil would do the media training. But there's massive crossover.
Of course.
So many of the skills are interchangeable and you need them for both. And similarly, even if you're working... doing panel discussion or panel moderation, it's a lot of those skills that you need to bear in mind apply to all of these circumstances.
So I'm really curious, knowing all that you know and having had the conversation we just had, and having an upcoming event just in a few weeks' time in London on that particular topic, I now know with absolute certainty that we will not be opening this event with, ladies, I am delighted to welcome you to my presentation training today. Is that right?
I will tell them who I am.
So tell us, just give us a hook. How are you going to start that event?
I will say who I am and establish my credentials.
That's it. That's
Because
the first sentence.
Why would they trust me? They've got to trust us in that room. Because we're asking them to come, try something new. It's a bit uncomfortable. And you're not sure that it's going to work. We're all, often we bring self-doubt with us. And we want to create an environment where they can trust us to have their best interests at heart. I love this training because over a few hours, you can really help people, give them a new toolkit to go away with, to sort of draw from in the future. And they need to know from me and from Neil that we've actually got something worth listening to. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why we're running this course.
I think obviously I'm not going to be running this one. This is,
but you'll be there.
This is Martine's. I think something which is important in both. I don't know if you'd agree with this, Martine. That some things that's
I
important.
hope I do.
Well, you might choose to chew a lump out of me on it, but something that's important in both in training and also in event moderation, which people often don't get or don't practice when they're moderating, say, a conference panel, is that a training session or a conference panel is not me and them. It's not the trainer and the delegates. It's not the moderator and then the panel and the audience separately. It is us. We are co-creating that event together. And so as a conference panel moderator, I would always want to involve the audience in some way right from the get-go. Whether that's by giving them a straw poll, today we're discussing this, who thinks X, who thinks Y, get people a chance to show their hands. And in a training session as well, very quickly, I would want to get the delegates talking back.
It's not a lecture. It's not a lecture. There's lots of room for discussion. It's tempting in the course of a day to sort of pack the day full of things that you want to get through. But it's as important, I think, to give people time to share their experiences, their questions, to learn from each other. And it's very much a collaboration, I think.
I had a mentor who used to say the curriculum is what's in the room. Now, that was in the context of mindfulness teaching, which is a little bit different from what we do, because in mindfulness, of course, the curriculum really is what's in the room when people meditate and share their experience afterwards. But there is still a large element of truth to that how you train people in the Lift Your Voice session that you're doing in March, Martine, we're going to have a maximum of 6 people, 6 women. 6 people.
But Neil,
women.
are they pregnant?
It's not mandatory, but it's definitely
pregnancy optional.
It's definitely not about. We're going to have 6.
Sorry, Martin, I couldn't help it. So can I come then? Am I pregnant enough?
Yeah, well, and you'll be even more so by then.
Those people are bringing their own experience and their own aspirations.
You insist with the people. You're not going to let them go, Neil.
The women. They're women, aren't they?
They are, but ordinarily it's men and women in the session. But this time it's just women.
It's
people
who are women.
Yeah.
This
I'm never going to get away from this subject.
No, I don't think you will.
It's going to follow me around my whole life.
I was trying to make a point there, and
it's just. Do you want to have another go at it?
No, it's fine. People can read.
Can I give you a confession, Martin?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think about you every time I hear someone say people.
Do you?
Which is a lot.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, no, sometimes it's a very useful word, and sometimes it's not the most accurate word.
When it's accurate, it's wonderful.
We need both of those words at different times.
Indeed, we do.
Now, I think that you said, how do you approach this? It's not just the words I'm going to be saying. It's the warmth that I need to show. I need to show people that I'm warm and approachable, trustworthy, and that I have enough experience to impart something that should be useful to them. Or otherwise, why are they there?
So if I'm in that room, I'm one of those 6 people. What do I see? What do I hear that tells me that you are warm and approachable and you've got something to give?
My facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
No eye rolls. Warmth, a smile, a softness, playful. If I had to name what I am, this brand thing, I don't think many of us really know what our brands are, but so sometimes other people need to tell you. But what I do know is that I'm quite playful. And in the world of news, which is quite very serious, often very upsetting, you have to kind of find little nooks and crannies in which to have some fun when it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate. But when you can, humour's a great leveller, and it just makes everyone relax. Again, it has to be appropriate. You don't want to offend anybody with a different, people's senses of humour are different. But I would say that what part of my brand is that I'm quite playful, and they will see that from right at the beginning. And it can be self-deprecating without being self-sabotaging. You have to be able to see the funny side of things and the funny side of your own personality, and I do. But then there are other things that somebody once did. The nicest compliment: witty, shrewd, and inclusive was one of the nicest compliments. I know. Would you believe?
Who was that?
I'll tell you later. I'm not going to share that on here. It was about me.
Oh,
but so it was a lovely way to be described. And you're not going to be to everybody's tastes, are you? I mean, there will be people who watch the news and really don't like what I do, and other people who really do like what I do. So, but that's just what comes from being your real self.
I love that you said that, and it made me think about a feedback that I actually just opened up this morning. So I was like, wanted to capture it, but sometimes when you can't publicly share feedback because the work that you've done with that organization is not something you can share publicly. But I just had one of the law firm that I work with tell me that the latest keynote that I provided was one that made them laugh, cry, feel inspired and motivated all at once, which they didn't think could be achieved.
Well, that's a testimonial.
I thought, that's going to make me laugh, cry,
absolutely.
feel inspired and motivated.
Was that your intent when you did that?
Yes, it was very much. And the reason for that is, again, just going back to having had that TEDx training. One thing that my coach said, and I really don't believe she invented that concept, I think it's actually a rather old quote. She told me, but it was the first time I was hearing it, people are not going to remember a word you say, but they will remember the way you're going to
feel.
Make them feel.
Maya Angelou.
Right?
They'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Exactly. So she didn't pretend that she was the inventor of that quote, but she said, that's really what you need to hold true. And it's so powerful because I've met people at networking events a year after my TEDx or months after, and they just still had that sort of teary eye contact with me and would just say, that story stayed with me and I shared it. And that they didn't remember the message, but the story stayed.
And if you're a big law partner and you're on a conference platform, you're on a conference panel, you don't need to make people cry. You don't necessarily need to make people laugh. But often a big part of the kind of training that I do is to make corporate execs, and if I may, in the way that Martine generalised about women, if I may generalise, often particularly men, is to help them to understand that there is a gap between information and behaviour change. And that gap lies in motivation, and motivation means emotion. So when you are giving a presentation or when you are doing a public interview, the emotion that you impart to your audience and that you seek to inculcate in your audience it's not just nice on the feedback form. It's actually crucial to getting them to change their behaviour in whatever. If you want that person in the audience to come up to you afterwards, after the conference panel, and ask for your business card because maybe they want to instruct your law firm, that is to an extent an emotional decision. And that is a big part. I don't know if you find that so much in the presentation skills training, but it's certainly something that I see in media training a lot.
Well, I think that's the polar opposite to death by PowerPoint,
Right.
isn't it? And I say that because particularly working in the world of law or finance, I find that extraordinary talent get lost or get their message profoundly diluted by hiding behind very, very busy slide deck. And that's one of the things, even when I work with law firm or hedge funds and they see how many slides I have, they have a tendency to say, why is this taking 15 slides to say a message that you could put in one? Because I want impact. I would rather have 5 words in each slide and something that echoes my voice and supports my message, rather than have people try to read 15 things at once.
Well, they can't read and listen to you at the same time.
Well, that's the
one
thing.
thing wins out. I think that overly complicated, dense visual presentations they drag you down.
They do.
They're meant to be additive. And actually, I think they diminish your message quite often. So we will concentrate on the sort of importance of visuals or not having them at all. But
that's scary to many people, not having visuals.
yeah, but it's something to try, isn't it?
I agree.
Maybe. I mean, in the TEDx and TED Talks, a lot of people don't have anything behind them, do they?
And intentionally, because I wanted to be solely focused on the delivery of my message. I didn't want to play with a clicker. I also, having done this for nearly a decade, I know there is always a death of clicker and battery and lag.
Yeah, what are you going to do if it packs up? And that happened to me once. I went back to my old university to do a talk about my career. And I mean, it was an easy subject because it's my life. But I had a presentation that I'd sent ahead, and then all the AV just broke down. So it was just me, and I just had to talk. And it didn't matter because I knew I knew my subject.
A key fact is that good slides are never good handouts. People think that they can construct a slide deck which is capable of being handed out afterwards as a work of reference. You know, the slide deck becomes the handout with all of the information on it. That doesn't work when you're presenting it on the podium. The slides, as you said, Charlene, 5 words is as many as human working memory can take in at one time. And so the simpler your slides are in the room, the better you're going to come across.
I love that you said that, because I get that all the time. Oh, we will circulate your slides to the delegates. Well, you absolutely can, but they won't make any sense. No. There is a picture of me when I was 5 years old at my father's desk. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. What does that mean, right?
Yeah. But I was just going to say that also, if we're asking you to come at this as you, how can a marketing department generate a slide deck that is bespoke for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because the marketing department will probably be putting together something that is for the company, for the organisation. It's also very hard to present somebody else's slides, because it's a straitjacket. It stops you being able to explore beyond those dense slides. And they're like a millstone, I think. And I often think that the people that we should start with are the marketing department, because if we're saying to people who have got to present marketing products and slides, they've got to be the right slides. So send us your marketing department first.
Exactly. And your PR people.
Yeah. And then everyone's singing from the same song sheet, surely.
And also, if you're presenting from off-the-shelf slides that somebody else has given you, you're breaking that golden rule that Martine mentioned earlier of starting from who are your audience and what's your purpose. If you're starting from that, if you're thinking about who's your audience in this room, what do you want these people to do? How do you want to influence them? Then by definition, you can't start from a manufactured slide deck.
It's like you apply for a job. You don't send the same CV and covering letter to every job. You have to shape it according to the job you're going for, the organisation.
Well, you would hope if you want to get that job.
Well, if you want to get the job. And I just think it's the same principle. It's bespoke. And your audience is likely to change. Every time you're going to have different people in the audience. So it might not be a wholesale rewrite of a presentation, but there'll be some significant changes that you might want to be thinking about doing.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, I'm curious, Neil, Martine, I want to put myself in the shoes of our listener. Who is it specifically that you can help? And what can you help them with?
Well, shall I go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I can go first. So you asked us how our partnership came together, the two of us. And it wasn't just forged on late night television, although it was. We both bring specific backgrounds. Martine obviously is a senior BBC presenter. I used to be a big law litigator at Linklaters and Debevoise back in the day. And then I went on to be a print journalist. So we bring decades of experience at the coalface of both, in my case, the profession of many of the people that I seek to train, but also being on the other side of the kind of interviews and presentations that we're training people to give. And I think the key thing to understand is this is not just an add-on. The way that you present or the way that you are interviewed is not just a soft skill, in inverted commas, which is in some way optional. If you want to get the maximum value for your time when you are being interviewed or when you're presenting, then you need to be skilled in doing that well, because otherwise you're going to miss out on value, career value for yourself, also commercial value for your organisation. And I can see Martine wants to get in, and I'm going to yield the floor in a second.
When don't I want to get in and say something?
I'll yield in a moment, Mr. Speaker. In the age of AI, a couple of weeks ago, Anthropic launched a tool which automates some legal tasks. You're nodding, Charlene, I'm sure you must have seen this. It specifically said on this tool, this is not to replace lawyers. This is for legal process, which needs to be checked by human beings. The shares in Thomson Reuters, the legal, which obviously one of its big verticals is legal information, those shares fell 18% in one day. Why am I mentioning that now? Because AI is going to automate an awful lot of, particularly in professional services environments, is going to automate an awful lot of what people currently do. You were talking to Sam Dixon from Womble Bond a few weeks ago about innovation in his firm, and you were quite rightly asking him, well, what happens to very technical lawyers in who aren't necessarily good on their feet? What happens to them in this new era? And the simple fact is that whether those technical lawyers continue to thrive or not, the human beings who prosper in the new business world 3.0 that's coming in about 2 years' time probably, those are the human beings who have the human skills, are able to communicate, are able to interact, are able to convince, are able to persuade, are able to listen and to respond rather than reacting. And that is, hopefully, that is the value that we bring in our training session. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you so much.
And can I add a little something to this? As you answer, Martin, and I can't wait to hear your answer, can you also address whether or not you like the term soft skills and whether or not you like it associated to communication skills specifically?
I think they're essential skills.
They're not soft.
I don't really know what that means anymore. I mean, I think what heartens me is that my children, who are now in their 20s, right from the beginning of going to school, when they were 3, they would do show and tell. And they would have to bring something in and talk about the toy or the possession that they've brought in. And right from the beginning, schools now are emphasising the importance of having the confidence to stand up in front of a group of people, your peers. Quite often that could be even more difficult than a group of strangers. And to be able to speak, to be articulate, to be confident, to hold the attention of the people in front of you. And I am so pleased that children are getting the chance to do that. All children in class are getting the chance to do that. And whether it's a conscious thing within education that they realise this is going to be an important skill, but it is an important skill. And I didn't do that. I was so self-conscious when I was a child and into my teens, in fact, to the point that friends of mine from school can hardly believe that I do the job that I do, because I was so self-conscious when I had to speak. The fact that we are now making it a priority with really small children and giving them the opportunity and requiring them to do that, I think is a great thing. I think what your question was, who is this for? I think it's for anyone who feels that they've got more to give as a presenter. They may already be pretty good, but what we can do is give them a new set of tools that they can choose from to enliven the way they do their presentations, to make them more memorable, to have the impact that you want to have, that it's not left to chance. We're not sort of guessing why we're doing this presentation. We're absolutely clear in our minds why we're doing it and who we're doing it for and what we want the result to be. And what we do as journalists is and particularly in television news as well, is we take complex subjects and we have to tell them as stories in a distilled form. We have to crystallise these huge amounts of information at speed quite often to tell a story that makes sense to a wide audience. And there's a lot of the skills that we use as journalists which we can share with people who come on these training courses, or women who come on the training course in March. And they're not coming in March.
Not in March. There will be another month for men, Neil.
April is Men Month.
Is it?
And so is July.
Okay.
July.
That's fine by me.
You shall have your month.
And we can share a lot of the skills, because there's so many times that people say, yeah, but I've got to include all of this information. And we go, no, you haven't. No, you don't. So, when I was a reporter, I'd go out and you'd film all day. And you'd come back to the edit suite and your editor would say, you got 2.5 minutes. You've got hours of footage. Mm. What are you going to say? Only you know what ends up on the cutting room floor, to use an old sort of film adage. The same goes with what you've left in. And was it Oscar Wilde? Sorry, this letter is so long, I didn't have time to write a short one. Mm. It's all in the edit. What are you going to leave in? People can't grasp, huge amounts of information all in one go. We need to help them understand what we're trying to impart and do it at speed. And there's a lot of stuff that we can share with people that comes from our occupations that you might think, well, but I'm a lawyer. What can I learn from you as journalists? Well, Neil obviously was a lawyer previously as well. So there's a huge amount of stuff that we can share that we use all the time in storytelling that's applicable in the commercial world or the legal world.
People don't absorb information in a different way just because they're in a legal conference hall than from when they're on TikTok or watching the 10 o'clock news. They are still human beings. They are still absorbing audiovisual information in the way that human beings do. And so when you think about the kinds of profession, well, I say profession, we're not really a professional, we're a trade.
We're a trade.
Journalists, we're a craft. The kinds of crafts where the imperative is to persuade, convince, grab people very quickly. And I think the two most obvious examples of those are journalism and advertising. Both of those use a great economy of expression, as Martine was just saying. And the utility of that doesn't end when you leave the TV studio. It's also applicable in the wider world.
That word economy, I use that quite often. I say, if you think about...
When you say I'm not flying economy.
If only I had that choice. Economy, if you watch anybody who is at the top of their game, whatever they are, they could be an athlete, they could be, a brain surgeon, they could be a stand-up comedian. There's an economy about what they do because they've worked so hard and they've honed their craft, their skill. They do what's necessary and nothing more. And it's beautiful to watch. It's an extraordinary thing to watch. There's nothing surplus. It's all deliberately left in, and anything you don't need is cast to the side. And that's some of the editing stuff that we can do.
Yeah.
We can help with.
Yes, we can. Take back control. Build the wall. You think about really successful political messages. They are incredibly short and incredibly emotional.
And advertising slogans, like you just mentioned.
Just do it.
Just do it. The most famous one in the world, just do it. Probably the most successful.
It works.
Yeah.
And it's timeless.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has, it has emotion, it has action, it has aspiration, all in 3 words. I'm loving it. McDonald's, same principle. Love, the most powerful positive emotion there is, and they're slapping it onto a hamburger.
And if we have a lawyer listening to us right now, I'm sure it will come as a huge surprise to you if I said that lawyers can be a bit stubborn sometimes.
Oh, really?
Well, maybe that's quite helpful.
Considering we have 2 former litigators in the room.
Exactly. Well, it's your job to be stubborn, right, when you're a litigator.
Right. And the reason I mentioned that is lawyers really are gifted with extraordinary skill, but seeking help is not one of them.
Now you're generalising, but you're right.
It's okay. I'm
You have
quite
to be
happy
infallible.
to take a stance on that. And I include myself. It took me years to admit to the fact that I needed external help, which is interesting when you think about it, because when you're a solicitor, what are you if not help to your client? So in other words, you are absolutely convinced that in your raison d'être, you need to be of service to your client, but you think that somehow when it comes to personal skills, you've got to sort it all yourself, right? So I think that's quite interesting. So what if we have...
So you all have trust issues, is basically what you're saying.
No lawyer ever known to mankind has ever had trust issues.
Skepticism,
Cynical?
suspicion.
None of that. We're just happy people who have rose glasses.
and just want the best.
Yes, of course. And only see the best.
That's
No
right.
catastrophic thinking.
No, never. Ever.
And we don't ruminate about the past either.
No.
We're
don't.
always anchored into the present.
Looking forward.
No lawyer has ever relived or pre-lived. Okay.
Never.
Always banging this moment.
So in the event that we did have someone who might be on the slightly stubborn side of the equation and who listens and says, I've got this. I'm a great lawyer. I've made partner. I've made equity. I've made global managing partner. Why on earth would I need to? I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, but what would you say to them, right? They clearly are absolutely brilliant at what they do. They are some of the brightest lawyers out there. Why do they still need you?
So I would say, okay, be science. You're a person of objectivity and science. You are a professional who works on the basis of the evidence. I would say to them, look at the kind of things that we say we can help you with. So public conference panels, podcasts, radio and TV interviews, press, trade press, whatever it might be. Look at the ones that you've done and ask yourself, how's it working out for you? Are you getting the value that you could do out of, and from Martine's bit of the business, the stand-up presentations as well, are you and your business getting the value that you need to get or that you could get from those episodes, those presentations? And ask other people, get evidence, ask other people to give you feedback, honest feedback, because the entire value in doing the kinds of things that we train people to do is in how they land with other people. So it doesn't matter if I am a partner, a big law partner, and I think I'm great. The question is, do other people think I'm great? And often it's hard to get honest feedback. And something that Martine and I have obviously spent our careers building is the toolkit to be able to advise people objectively on what will land with their audience.
Also, it's very easy to get into bad habits. You can kind of get a bit comfortable. So I always encourage people to watch themselves back as well, sometimes with the sound off. Is your body language what you're trying to convey? And I, after all these years of working in broadcasting, I still watch things back with a critical eye to make sure that I'm sitting properly, that I've got the right tone in how I'm broadcasting. Was that really the best question that I could have asked? There's always something that you can learn from your own performance and other people's as well. But just to have the opportunity on a course like ours to come and take stock away from the office, just to have a moment, just to think about your own performance and to tweak things a little bit and hear another perspective on things. And now, even now, all through all these years, I'm sure you used to do it when you were writing for papers. You try to, you write something and you think, this isn't quite landing. So you show it to someone else, don't you? And you'd say, can you have a read of this? Is this clear? And there's no shame in that at all. It's essential that you do that.
When I was at the Telegraph, I sat on a pod of 4 desks with some very, very good reporters. Gordon Rayner, who's now, associate editor at the Telegraph. Stephen Swinford, who's now political editor, I think, at the Times. And there would sometimes be at kind of 5 o'clock in the afternoon when you're on deadline, guess the intro, where you just, you've got because the first 30 words that you write in the news story below the headline are obviously the most crucial words of that story. And even for experienced reporters who've done this for years, it's something like Martine says, you just, your brain freeze.
You're so close to it, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And getting that input from the council can be really important. I'm not sure I was good enough to help Gordon or Stephen, but they definitely helped me.
Well, Neil, Martin, I certainly feel inspired after this conversation. And
so we sign you up then?
Absolutely. I think I qualify.
Yeah, we do.
And I really can't wait to continue this conversation. And I would really love to invite our listener to look up your training, both on the media and communication skills.
It's good fun.
It is
great
good fun.
We love it, don't we? We love delivering it, and that hopefully comes across. That we really we want the best for the people who come along, and by the end of the day, they tend to walk out a little bit taller.
Can I plug the website?
I was hoping you would. You've stolen my last question. You see, you couldn't help it. And this is the journalist striking. Neil, why don't you take the floor? Ask yourself the question and answer the question to close.
Shall I do it?
Yeah, actually, that would be fun. Please.
Neil, where can women find out about the training course that Upstage Training's offering in March?
Do you know what, Martine? That's such a good question.
Thanks.
And the answer is upstagetraining.com. Upstagetraining.com. Also, a very good thing is that Martine and I both have ridiculous English surnames. So we are very easy to find on LinkedIn. Croxall and Midgley are
Travelling incognito.
Far from common. So please do feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn too.
Thank you. I may have to see if you're available, Martine, to ask the final round of questions for my next episode, because that was beautiful.
Absolutely delighted to join you.
You can't be delighted. We've scratched that word from the vocabulary.
I meant it.
So
That's
you
the
can
difference.
only say delighted if you truly were delighted.
You were paying attention. Very good.
Of course. How could I not? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
If you want to be featured on industry's leading podcasts, you know you need to grow your LinkedIn presence and improve your personal brand, but have zero time to do it yourself. Capture B is your answer. I've been using it myself, and it's been just a game changer. So today, I want to share it with you. If you're ready to grow your business and personal brand without burning out in the process, go to captureb.io. Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.